The Curses and the Covenants, A History Weaver Mystery, Book 2, by Connie Worden. Read by the author. Chapter 20. As I unlocked my desk drawer to get my purse and go home, I remembered that I'd been planning to check on my computer and see if I'd bothered to add Julia's latest fiasco to my notes in her file. I took the notebook out of the drawer where I habitually kept it. I'd need to refresh my memory on the conversation. I fired up my sleeping computer and started typing my password. Instead, the computer made its unhappy noise at me and told me that I'd had too many failed attempts to log in and would be locked out of my account. Checking Julia's files would now have to wait until tomorrow, giving my computer time to recover. But what was it talking about too many failed attempts? I hadn't had any failed attempts. As I slung my purse over my shoulder, the realization dawned on me that someone must have been trying to hack into my computer. But who? And why? The only reason I could imagine was my Julia file. Who would want to get into that? Had Julia skipped out of class to try her hand at hacking into my computer? I'd have to ask around to all her teachers. I passed Larry in the hall on the way out to my car. "See you later," I said abstractedly to him. To my surprise, he turned when he saw me and said, "I'll walk you out. Something I wanted to ask you." "Oh, what's that?" "Just curious to know how the Julia situation's going." "Well, I'm sure you've heard that we've got the police involved. You've heard all the different versions of her various stories?" "Not really. I mean, a bit of gossip. But I was wondering how you're managing everything. I mean, is it getting to you at all?" "Emotionally? Yeah, somewhat. I don't know how to handle her, or the situation. That's the problem. I just feel at a loss." "Well, hey, do you want to go grab a coffee and talk? I don't have anywhere I have to be, if you have time." While I thought about my answer, we exited the school building, and I saw Sarah leaning up against my car, waving at me. "Looks like my cousin is waiting for me. If she's free, we could all go for coffee." "Yeah, sure," Larry said, unenthusiastically. Was there a tinge of disappointment in his tone? I tried not to read into it. "You waiting for me, Sarah?" I asked her. "I thought I might as well. I had a meeting with Julia during last period, so I thought I'd wait till you were done for the day." "Thanks. Hey, Larry was just suggesting getting a coffee. You want to? You have time?" "Sure, I'm done for the day. Besides, there's a few things I wanted to ask you about Julia's latest. Larry's dialed into what's going on, I'm guessing?" "Somewhat. Not officially, but it's a small school. Staff talks, whether or not we should." He shrugged. "Well, then we can talk freely. Just don't let it go any farther if we say something we shouldn't," Sarah warned him. I'd noticed we were all tending to hold our confidentiality agreements rather loosely. But then, we were all involved in one way or another. "So, how did your interview with Julia go?" I asked Sarah after Blair had brought us our coffees. Sarah made an exasperated face. "About like you'd expect." "Frustrating?" "She was completely uncooperative. Of course I had to ask her about her latest claim, trying to get all the details I could out of her. Pete tried to chat with her earlier today and she refused to answer any questions. He asked me to try. Of course, she has the right to remain silent and all that, but I'm not exactly trying to incriminate her. If anything, I'm just looking for holes in her story to confront her with. Let her know that we know she's making the whole thing up. It's time someone gets a bit tough on her. I think her parents are scared of her, so they handle her with kid gloves. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who's not afraid of her." You might be right there, but you didn't get anywhere with her?" "No, she clammed up, and then halfway through the hour we were supposed to have together, she said her parents were there, and she had to go." "So she left school early?" "I suppose so. She left our meeting early anyway." "You didn't see her leave?" "No, not the school, at any rate." "So she would have had a chance to sneak into my office last period," I mused. "The Fairchild's vehicle was there when I came out right after she left me, so I guess she wasn't making that part up. Funny thing, though, it was still there till shortly before you came out. I saw them drive off, but I didn't speak to them. I don't know what they were doing there all that time. I didn't notice if they were waiting in the car the whole time or what. I didn't see them come out, but I suppose they may have come out the back entrance. The vehicle was in the back parking lot." "That's odd, isn't it?" Sarah shrugged. You mean that their car was at the school for an hour or more? Not really. Maybe her parents wanted to talk to the principal. Well, they wouldn't have been talking to the principal that whole time. I was in her office since school let out. Sarah shrugged incuriously. Well, who knows? Who knew, indeed? And who knew who had been messing with my computer trying to break my passcode? I didn't know, but I wanted to. The Fairchild's vehicle had been on the premises while someone had been trying to hack into my computer. Maybe it was coincidence, or maybe it wasn't. Larry didn't say much during our discussion, but he was taking it all in. So Julia told you something about a pile of stones? Sarah asked me abruptly. That's the story. She shot the guy and then piled stones over his body. Weird child, Sarah muttered to herself. So what I wanted to ask you was if she gave you any details where she claims this pile of stones is. Pete said she wouldn't give him anything on it. Was it my imagination, or did Sarah tense up slightly as she asked me the question? She shifted her weight as she brought up Pete's name, I noticed. It was the second time she had called Pete, Pete. I didn't think I liked it. Maybe I was the one tensing and projecting it onto Sarah. She told me it was in one of the wooded areas surrounding Beaver Row. Perfect, Sarah groaned. That narrows it down, so anywhere outside of Beaver Row. Pretty much. That isn't going to help the guys at all. The guys? The officers, I mean. Apparently they are going to have to investigate. It would be nice if they didn't have to wild goose chase all over the valley. If they could confine the wild goose chase to one area, at least. Well, I'm sure that was Julia's idea. It will be hard to disprove her story this way. Looks like it will have to remain as an open investigation because there will be no way to disprove it. Edie suggested that they should threaten to charge her with wasting police time. Could they do that? Sarah turned to Larry. He cleared his throat. I think you'd know more about the legal side of things than I would, he told her. We all silently sipped our coffees while we considered possibilities. For no particular reason, the pile of stones of Julia's fiction put me in mind of the 7 sacred objects of Evangel's diary, and the recent history of which my writing club had informed me. And they put me in mind of Joe Delway from Penhurst. You grew up in Penhurst, didn't you? I said to Larry. Did you ever know of a guy named Joe Delway? Larry looked surprised. You know Joe? As a matter of fact, we were friends all through elementary school. Joe and I and another guy named Phil Vikerts. We were pretty much the 3 musketeers. We drifted apart in high school, though, at least I stopped hanging out with Joe and Phil. We were just going in different directions. We still tried to hang out some, but a year or so out of high school, we completely lost contact. He paused and side-eyed Sarah. Actually, that's how I met Sarah, through Joe. Well, through Joe and Danny. You know Joe Delway, Sarah? Sarah looked bored by the subject. Not really. Danny used to hang around with him and Phil, and Larry, sometimes, when Larry was hanging out with them. Do you remember the summer after grade 10? Danny took off and moved up to Penhurst for the summer and found a summer job there. Our parents weren't thrilled about it, but he was 16 then. There wasn't much they could do to stop him. And they thought the independence could be good for him. It wasn't. Anyway, yeah, I met Larry and Joe and Phil when I'd go up to visit Danny. Joe and Phil and Danny were living someplace together, somebody's summer cottage, I think. Yeah, my aunt's and uncle's place at their campground, Larry put in. They had a vacant cabin that summer, so they let the guys move in as a favor to me, knowing that Joe and Phil were old friends of mine. Sarah ignored the interruption and continued. Well, Danny met Joe through his summer job and then moved in with the 2 guys to save on rent. I definitely remember meeting Larry then when he'd hang out at their place. I wouldn't say we really knew each other then, though, she said to Larry. Not really. I vaguely remember meeting Danny's twin sister then. We only got to know each other when I moved to Beaver Row and started working in the school, even though you were living in Cherryton by then. I did just remember meeting you at Minor Lake. That train of thought led me on to another, and I said to Sarah, Did you ever read that old diary of our great-great-grandma Evangel? I think your mum must have a copy. 'Cause my mom has one, and she told me that she and her sister and all her cousins, and I suppose second cousins, were given a copy. Sarah looked at me with question marks in her eyes. Whatever put that into your head, Ange? Just a random train of thought. Yeah, I know the diary. I read it ages ago. I don't really remember much that was in it. I was probably too young to get much out of it. I should give it a read sometime again, now that I'm a little more interested in the past and history. I don't know what that old diary has to do with anything, though. Well, actually, it was Joe Delway that put it into my head. You don't remember the part in the diary about a cradle offered to Evangel and her husband in a treaty they made with the local natives, do you? Sarah looked past me. Oh, vaguely. Yeah, I think I remember something about it. Seemed kind of like the main event in that diary. Great-great-grandma really took on about it, didn't she, from what I recall? Well, turns out, I found out from some of the girls in my English class and my writing club that that old cradle resurfaced in recent times, and Joe Delway had something to do with it. I'm not too clear on the details. He seemed very eager to get his hands on it. The girls told me their theory, that he's from the group that had some connection to it historically, and he was just really interested in the history of it. That was his half-brother's theory. From everything else they told me about him, that explanation didn't quite ring true to me, though. I got the impression from what the girls told me that the half-brother doesn't know Joe very well. So maybe that was just his idea. So, really, knowing nothing at all about him, I'm working on a theory of my own. Besides the cradle, Evangel's diary had a lot to do with the gold found in this area, and her husband's involvement in mining it. She mentioned in the diary that she'd hidden some gold in the cradle, or something like that. The idea occurred to me that maybe it was the gold that Joe Delway was after with that cradle. But how would he have known about it or the gold hidden in it? I'm just spitballing here, don't mind me. Larry snorted. I can't imagine Joe Delway being too interested in history. If there was gold somewhere in the picture, that makes more sense of his interest in this cradle you're talking about. He was always after a quick buck. He wasn't too particular how he came by it. Hence the reason he's in jail, I would imagine. Or at least that's the last news I'd heard about him. The last rumor, at least. I knew a little more from the girls about why Joe Delway was in jail, but I didn't bother to let Larry in on the whole story as I'd heard it from them. Instead, I said to Sarah, You don't suppose Danny ever read that diary and passed on the information to Joe about the gold hidden in that cradle, do you? Sarah stared at me skeptically. Highly unlikely. I have a very hard time imagining Danny reading that diary at all. Not the kind of thing that would have interested him, much less his friends. Oh well, I shrugged. Like I say, just thinking out loud here, there are some pieces of a puzzle I'm trying to make sense of. No one had anything to say after the brief stroll down memory lane. I was still thinking about the 7 strange articles of furniture that Will Lyons had discovered in the woods surrounding the cherry barn. That factoid led me on the train of thought of remembering that the Coral Lyons family were on the same road as me and were neighbors of mine. My property must be close to the spot where they dug through the earth to discover the old caved-in, failed mine shaft and the 7 sacred objects. Then my mind slipped into the realization that my property must be near the old mine. So was the land of my great-great-grandmother. Then I toyed with the idea that perhaps I had ended up buying a piece of the land that my ancestors had originally occupied. The idea of a curse on their land that had transferred to me, the great-great-granddaughter, jumped into my head and I shooed it away quickly. But neither Sarah nor Larry were very talkative at the moment, and along my train of thought, I remembered something I'd wanted to tell Sarah that was somewhat on topic. Funny thing, the Fairchilds were the ones who had put in an offer on my place, I informed Sarah. Is that funny? I don't know, it struck me as an odd coincidence. That, and the odd coincidence of the Fairchild vehicle being outside the school for no apparent reason at the same time that someone had been trying to hack into my computer. It probably was just odd coincidence, and I was getting paranoid reading into things. Odd coincidence? That they backed out of the sale, I mean. They didn't tell me the reason why. You're not thinking your piece of land has anything to do with the pile of stones, are you? Larry put in and then laughed sheepishly at himself. Look at me, acting like there really is a pile of stones somewhere. No, I wasn't thinking that exactly. I don't know what I was thinking. She is making it all up, isn't she? Julia, I mean, I asked of no one in particular. maybe myself. Angie, really? After everything she's pulled? Even I'm not willing to give her any benefit of the doubt on this one. Besides, her stories are just getting more and more wild, Sarah said impatiently. Well, she did tell me a story that might be true, I said. Which one? Sarah cocked a disbelieving eyebrow at me. She told me she was adopted. Julia had dropped that little tidbit in passing in one of our prior sessions together, but after I'd already stopped believing her stories. Well, she's not, Sarah said flatly. I'm not so sure, I said slowly. Genetics and eye color, now that I've met her parents, that one actually makes sense. Oh, right, Larry interjected. Brown-eyed kid with 2 blue-eyed parents. Either that or her mom might have some explaining to do. I hadn't thought of that. If Sarah knew that Julia wasn't adopted, I wondered for a second if Dr. Fairchild was Tamara's second marriage. Possibly she was Tamara's child, but not her present husband's, or maybe vice versa. I didn't know enough about the family to know anything other than that the genetics didn't add up. How do you know she's not adopted? I asked Sarah. She raised one shoulder in a half shrug. No one's ever said she is. Being her caseworker, I should know if she was. Have the other investigations been dropped? I asked, changing the subject. I wasn't going to get anywhere speculating about the Fairchilds and their genetics. Not officially, but yes, in reality they have. There's just nothing to point to anything she's said being true so far. Is that what Pete told you? I probed. Sarah tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and smiled a secretive little smile. Well, not officially. He mentioned it, but not during working hours. Oh, I said flatly. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. But Sarah was sure she wanted me to know. We went to see a movie in Sheraton last night. We tried not to talk about work, but it would come up. Uh-huh. I tried to keep the hot, telltale color out of my face. After all, Pete had made it clear that he and I were nothing but friends. So what if he was also friends with my cousin? Neither of us meant anything to him. Or even if our dinner had been a date, that didn't mean he couldn't go on a date with a different person on another occasion. That was how dating worked, I was told. I couldn't help my stomach experiencing the knowledge of Sarah and Pete's movie date as betrayal, however, no matter how I tried to rationalize it. Oh, but don't say anything to anyone about Pete and I mean, Sarah warned Larry and I. That's why we went to Cheriton, to avoid the town gossips. Sure, not a problem, I said. Well, kids, I should probably head. I'll get the coffees, I said, getting up out of my seat as I said it. My hasty departure must have looked like the flight it was. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah's smug face like a cat licking cream off its whiskers. A cat. That was what she reminded me of, all right. But not in a nice way. Why did she always manage to take me right back to our high school days and the person I didn't want to be anymore?